Hey, welcome back. So we are kind of in a weird filming location right now. We're in my garage, but that's kind of how it has to be just as I'm in this transition moving phase. So I'm kind of gonna be in different spots for the next couple videos, but that's okay. And in today's video, what I wanted to talk about is a couple of emergencies and learning situations I've had over the past couple weeks as I've been learning to fly a new helicopter. And you know, as I have grown this channel, the point of the channel was to promote education and make helicopters more understandable. And that's for me as well. I am learning every single time I go out and fly. Every flight that you survive is a new learning experience, and hopefully you gain something. And especially when you transition onto a new platform, a new helicopter, you're gonna learn a bunch of new things. So here are two situations that happened over the last couple weeks that I have learned a lot from. And also, if my voice sounds a little bit weird, I'm kind of sick, as well as the garage is very echoey, so that's kind of why the noise may sound kind of weird. So the first one is really funny and kind of interesting. The second one was more problematic, so stick around for that one. That one's got a lot of learning in it. But the first one, so I'm flying the Cabri G2, and we were out this week. I'll throw a picture of the temperature up on that day, but I think it was around 85 degrees. And we were out doing hovering work. So we were practicing slope landings, and as the name implies, you land on the slope and you practice that. Pretty intense on the helicopter, you know, hovering is super intense, and it was really hot out and we were in the direct sun. So I guess I should have thought more about that, but I didn't really. And on the Cabri, you have that MLI, which is that display, and it gives you all of your critical flight information like fuel, engine temperature, engine oil, pressures, rotor RPMs, amount of power pulling, how much power you're using. Really critical information. So as we were hovering doing slopes, all of a sudden on that MLI screen, which stands for multiple limit indicator, on that screen, and I'll have to check that. I'm pretty sure that's what it stands for. But on the screen, I saw this yellow box with a red thermometer come up and flash, goes off, flash, go off, and flash, go off. It happened 3 times, and then all of a sudden the screen turned off. And I'm the instructor, and I look over at my student's looking at me, and we're like, and so it's pretty clear what happened. It was a really hot day, so the thing had overheated, but it's like, oh snap, so what do we do in this situation that we don't have any critical performance or critical performance information? Well, obviously this has been thought of. If you lose your MLI, it's an emergency procedure, it's in the POH, but obviously I'm not that familiar with the POH. It's not what I grew up learning, so even though I've read through it, it didn't sink through immediately what I needed to do. But the nice thing is, right next to the MLI, over to the left, we have a backup rotor sensor, rotor RPM sensor. So you flip that to the backup position, and then at least you know your rotor RPM, which is really critical. Like if your engine fails, to know whether your rotor RPM is too high, right where it should be, or too low. So we flip that over, and luckily we were down low and we were not in flight. So we were able to taxi over it and set it down and shut it down to let it start cooling off. And as we were shutting it down, we realized that we did not bring the wheels to move it into different areas. So we could not move the helicopter into the shade, which was a learning experience by itself. In the back of the Cabri, there's actually a place to store the wheels. Unlike the Robinsons, there's not really a good spot to store the wheels to transport them. But in the Cabri, in the back compartment, you can carry the wheels. So I should have carried the wheels. I'm always going to make sure that I'm within weight and balance so that I can carry the wheels in the event that this happens. Especially in the cold, like let's say for some reason you need to shut down in the cold and you need to move the helicopter to a warm area, you want to have the wheels for that. Or now in the summer, have the wheels so that you can move the area into a shaded, cooler area. So that was really interesting. Limit the amount of time that I spend in the sun and hovering specifically. And just know that that can happen, and we have that backup display. So that was just a really cool learning experience. And this video is moving pretty quick. We're gonna move on to the second one. This one happened a couple days before that, but I was out with a student practicing hovering auto rotations. And a hovering auto rotation, as the name implies, is you're in about a 3 to 5 foot hover, you roll the throttle off, you use the inertia of the rotor system to come down and cushion the landing as your engine is off. And so I practiced these a couple times in the Cabri and they were all fine, but this was actually one of the first times I was doing it as the instructor with a student. And one thing that I should have been more aware of, and it's obvious when I say it now, but it wasn't necessarily clear how impactful it would be in the moment, was the inertia of that main rotor system. So coming from the Robinson R22 and the Robinson R44, the R22 has an extremely low inertia rotor system. There's not much power stored in that main rotor. On the Robinson R44, same thing. There's a little bit more power just because it's bigger and heavier, but the same rules apply. It's inherently a low inertia rotor system. And conversely, in the Cabri, it's got an extremely high inertia rotor system. So there's just a ton of energy stored in that rotor system. So when you chop the throttle on a Robinson R22, you're gonna fall pretty quickly, and there's not too much cushioning. You can cushion it pretty good, but there's not a ton. In the Cabri G2, if you chop that throttle and you pull back up, you go up. You can do that in the Robinson R44, but the Cabri definitely has a lot of inertia. So that was a learning curve, definitely. You can't really yank a lot. You can't yank all that collective because you'll go back up. So it's kind of just a raise to cushion. It's more fun and it feels better just to have that power, but you're not raising everything. In the R22, you raise everything to cushion that landing. So as I was doing hovering autos with my student, it was like one of the first, I think it was the first one of the day, which is always dangerous. And I said hover auto. We had talked through it. He had done them a couple times with another instructor, first time with me. So I say hover auto in 3, 2, 1. I close the throttle, nose yaws a little bit, but that's not that bad. We come down, we hit kind of hard, and he raises a little bit and I raise with him. And then we come back down and we're on the ground with that collective still up and we're bouncing. We're bouncing side to side on the skids. And that rotor system, because it's an articulated rotor system, those blades are kind of out of phase and we're shaking, and we're really shaking. And this is the moment where I really effed up, I messed up. We sat there and I just let the helicopter continue to shake, and I guess I wasn't aware of what was happening, or it happened so quick. And we were shaking really hard, and eventually, we kind of spun a little bit, but eventually it did come to a stop. And I was like, holy shit, what just happened? And now that I think back to it, I'm pretty sure it was ground resonance. We must have hit and sent a shock wave through the rotor system, because those articulated blades can lead and lag a little bit. And we've got those dampeners. They must have gotten out of phase a little bit, and it was pretty violent. And that's a massive learning experience. And I know that in the event that you have ground resonance, lower the collective, or if you have flight RPM, pick it back up. But I kept the collective up because that's what I was used to in the Robinson helicopters. Keep the collective up, cushion it, and then lower the collective. But what I should have done is, the second we hit and I started to feel weird, lower the collective. Just hit my car, but lower the collective, and I just wasn't able to think through that or in the moment. And it was not a good situation. I wish it didn't happen. But on the other hand, I'm really glad it happened and it worked out okay. And that the helicopter was fine and we were fine and we didn't flip anything, because it really taught me a valuable lesson. And I got to see what ground resonance and that articulated rotor system and the blades leading and lagging feel like. Like I alluded to at the start of this video, this channel is about education. So I'm learning every day, and I hope that you guys can I hope you got something from that, from both the first story and the second story, that things can go wrong, and even though we've got experience, things can happen extremely quickly. When we were doing that hover auto, we were really bouncing, and I thought we might flip this helicopter. We didn't. The helicopter landed flat and it was all okay. We did a thorough post-flight, but education, I'm constantly learning new things. All aviators, pilots out there are constantly learning new things, and every flight that you survive and come back down and you're okay, it's a success. And that's kind of my biggest takeaway from this. It was embarrassing for me, because it was you should know that, that's how ground resonance happens. But I didn't, and I wasn't able to put the 2 and 2 together, but now I have the knowledge, and I survived, and the helicopter is okay, and it was a great learning experience for my student. So those are the emergencies I've had in the Cabri G2 as I've learned this helicopter recently. If you found enjoyment out of that video, or if you learned something out of that video, smash that like button. I really appreciate it. I'm gonna keep doing this, you know, as I am lucky enough to fly helicopters and have this YouTube channel. I'm gonna keep promoting my learning. I hope that you guys keep learning along with me. If you have any questions about this or anything aviation related, leave them down in the comments below. You can follow me on Instagram, subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you guys on the next one. Take care.